How is this helping so many different people?
Everybody is telling stories all day long. The people who use them strategically and consciously and deliberately are the ones who get a result. The challenge for most people is they do not understand what I mean when I say you need to tell a story about who you are and what you do rather than explaining what you do. One of my quotes is, logic explains, stories persuade. People don't understand that if you explain what you do in logical linear terms with facts and data, and it's just, I've explained it really well, that's what I do, okay, now buy it.
Hey everybody, I'm Ken Newhouse, and I'm going to welcome you to the Get Clients Now podcast, the show where high-growth consultants and professionals come to access the newest and most effective methods and systems for online marketing, advanced sales and persuasive communication strategies, and automated marketing funnels. And if you're wondering if the Get Clients Now podcast can help you get more high-value clients, enjoy more sales, build a massive tribe, and make more money, you're absolutely going to love this show.
Newhouse's work completely blows everything else that we've ever done with Google out of the water.
I have been looking for a way to grow my presence online, and what I've viewed from Newhouse's work was something that certainly is faster than anything I've seen before.
He says he's going to do something and he does it. He does it in the time frame that he says he's going to do it in. It's exciting when you talk about the results that you're going to get, and you can believe his word because he follows it up with action.
The Newhouse is direct. He's to the point. He tells you what's on his mind, and he backs his words up. From what I know now, from working with him, he's passionate about his work, and he backs it up 100%.
What I like best is you offer something that no one else has out there, which is a pretty comprehensive approach about marketing a system.
If somebody asks me, should they use the Newhouse's team? Absolutely, because you're going to get the important information that you need very, very quickly.
On the internet, on the different marketing techniques, I've never experienced anything like this.
I would definitely recommend Ken Newhouse for someone who's serious about growing their business. I think that your results based on the numbers would at least double the sales in a very short time frame.
Hey everybody, Ken Newhouse here from kennewhouse.com, and I want to welcome you back to the Get Clients Now podcast, where the one-size-fits-all marketing model is dumb, the client-centric business model is king, and the sales control system gives you the tools to build your tribe with certainty. This is episode number 331 of the Get Clients Now podcast, and today is part one of a two-part interview I recently did with Doug Stevenson. And as most of you guys know, Doug is one of the leading experts and coaches in the world in the field of storytelling for business. And over the next two episodes, he's going to reveal the story theater method. It's a method of storytelling for business that can help you attract more prospects, increase conversions, and help you sell a lot more of your stuff, and ultimately help you become exceedingly profitable, which is always a good thing. It's always, as I like to say, we're in business to make a profit on purpose. This is definitely not a show for nonprofits. However, I would say that if you work at a nonprofit or if you own a nonprofit, you can certainly learn a lot on this show. But certainly our podcast is for people who are in business to make a profit on purpose. Now, if you're a subscriber and a regular listener to this podcast, we've been doing a series on storytelling for business over the last several weeks. And in light of that, we're still getting questions from people who are asking, what does storytelling have to do with me getting more clients and selling more of my stuff? And so I'm going to give you an answer to that. And then when we bring Doug in on the show, I'm going to let him have a go at answering that question as well, because I think it's a legitimate question. Now, yes, we've answered this question, I don't know how many times already before, but let's answer it again. So here's my take on it. Storytelling in business has everything to do with you, the business owner, the manager, the professional, whatever you are, being more persuasive in the eyes of your clients, customers, and your patients, your employees, your vendors, all the people you deal with. And as everybody knows, persuasion is foundational to the success of any business. If you can't be persuasive, you're not going to be in business very long. It's just not going to happen. And whether it's through face-to-face interactions, whether it's through interactions with your website, maybe interactions with your Facebook or AdWords ads, right? Your pay-per-click. Could be interactions with one of the members of your team over the phone, or it could be through any of the types of marketing collateral that you might produce. Listen, clients, patients, and customers have to be convinced. They have to be persuaded if they're going to make the decision to buy what you're selling, whether it's a product or service, and give you money. They've got to be persuaded. But persuasion doesn't end there, as I just kind of alluded to, right? Because unless you're a solopreneur, what do you have? You've got employees, you've got team members, you've got business partners perhaps, and all those people have to be persuaded as well. In addition to that, you got to be able to persuade your vendors that you want to do business with, And from here, I could go on and on and on about all the people that you need to persuade in the course of doing business, but I'm not going to do that. Now, in spite of the critical and obvious importance of persuasion, I'm going to go out on a limb here. This might step on your toes, and if I do, I'm sorry. That's your problem, not mine. And I don't say that irreverently. I don't say that to be kind of a smarty pants. I'm saying that as a way to stimulate you and encourage you to become a better communicator, a master communicator. But I would say in my estimation, and I think you can find this across the internet, it's actually quite prevalent, but most consultants, most coaches and professionals, and when I say professionals, I'm talking about not lawyers, because lawyers are professional communicators, they're professional arguers. I won't talk about their integrity or any of the jokes or anything like that, but when we talk about professionals, I'm talking about like dentists and chiropractors. But most of these folks, coaches, consultants, professionals, are really better at babbling and tossing out techno speak than they are at communicating persuasively. And to help illustrate that point, I'm going to share a quick story with you. So back in June of 2019, I get an email, and the email basically says, hey, listen, I've been listening to your podcast. I want to talk to you. I need your help. And this was an email from Dr. Drew Randall. So I read the email. I check out the guy's website. I read as much as I can about him before I respond to him. I respond by emailing him back. And so we set up a Zoom video call. So I start having this conversation with Drew, and Drew begins to tell me how, first and foremost, that he listens to the podcast, and one of his favorite shows was the show that I did with Dr. Kevin Hogan on persuasion. Drew tells me, Ken, I need to learn how to become more persuasive. I really think I'm really good at what I do. I think I'm a good dentist. My patients think I'm a good dentist. But in my opinion, I need to learn how to become more persuasive, and I'd like to talk to you to see if you can help me. So I said, okay, Drew, let's kind of walk through what's going on. Tell me what's going on. So at that point, Drew tells me that he had actually practiced with his dad for over 14 years. His dad obviously was a dentist, right? But the office where he was practicing with his dad was like 40 minutes, 35 or 40 minutes one way. And he had gotten to the point where he didn't want to continue making that long drive, and so he wanted to open up his own practice. So he bought an existing practice from an older doctor who was retiring, which is right down the street from where he lived. And he actually lives in Highland Park, Texas, which is a suburb in Dallas. And his office literally is like 2 blocks from the SMU campus, and his house is on the other side of the campus, I don't know, like a quarter mile down the street. So he wanted to be closer to where he lived instead of driving all that way. But as a biorejuvenation dentist, it's kind of a high-end combination of cosmetic and restorative dentistry. He's got a lot of patients that come in with TMJ problems. He has a lot of patients that come in with worn-out teeth and headaches and just all kinds of issues, health issues they're having, in addition to having teeth that, just don't look very good anymore. And so Drew continues to tell me that he spent a ton of money on a website, which was an utter disaster, running print ads, running Facebook PPC, AdWords. He's getting traffic, but he's having a hard time getting people to accept his recommendations for treatment. He lives in a very upscale part of town, as I mentioned. It's a very high rent district where he lives and where he practices, having these patients come in, but his conversion ratio, he told me, he said, Ken, for every 10 patients that I see, I'm only getting one of them to accept my recommendation for biorejuvenation. Now you do the math. What percentage is that? Well, that's like 10%. So my response to that was, well, Drew, kind of give me the rundown on what you're doing with these patients. So the first thing he does when the patients come in, they fill out their paperwork before he even does an exam. He's not doing it now, but he was before he even did his exam. He had this PowerPoint presentation, and the name of the PowerPoint presentation was, I'm not kidding, The Dreadful Story. Now, yes, it was a dreadful story, but it was dreadful in the sense that it was dreadful to put his patients through that. Literally, he was losing people on the front end. This was a PowerPoint that was filled. It was jam-packed with technical doctor speak, like medical research stuff that went completely over the heads of most patients, and it was boring, and it simply wasn't working. And so one of the first things that I taught Drew was about social proof. We talked about social proof, in fact, on last week's episode. Social proof in the form of video testimonials from his existing patients, and social proof in the form of storytelling. And so over the course of working with Drew, going to his practice multiple times, doing weekly coaching sessions with him and his team, we've gotten Drew to the point where now he's not only utilizing video testimonials, outcome-based video testimonials of his existing patients who've gone through biorejuvenation and literally had their health and their life transformed. Not only their appearance, but like their health, totally transformed. But Drew's also been incorporating storytelling, social proof storytelling, into the framework of his practice, and he has completely eliminated that dreadful story approach, which was obviously given to him by someone who has no idea what they're doing when it comes to influence and persuasion. And so in a recent conversation with Drew and talking to him, I said, hey, listen, how is it working out? How's the social proof working out for you? How are the things we taught you about utilizing social proof in your storytelling working out in your case presentations? And how's the case acceptance going? And he said, Ken, I've never seen anything like this. We went from an average of 1 out of 10 people accepting my recommendations for biorejuvenation, and that number is now up to 3 out of 10 people are accepting my recommendations for treatment. Now, you might think that, hey, 30% conversion? That's not very good. That's actually kind of lame, Ken. Well, listen, 30% conversion on cases that range from $40,000 to $100,000 plus is a pretty big deal. And when you do the math, going from 1 out of 10 to 3 out of 10, that's a 300% increase. And when you look at the value of one of his average biorejuvenation patients, this is like a $100,000 a month bump for him, just from one strategy that we taught him utilizing social proof in the form of outcome-based video testimonials and social proof encapsulated in storytelling. Now, if you're like me and if you're like my most successful clients, you can see that that is a tremendous windfall for him in his practice. That is a massive, massive improvement in his case presentation, in his case acceptance, and really in his bottom line. That's a massive improvement. But in spite of that, in spite of the fact that you agree with me that that is really, really outstanding, you still might be asking yourself the question, is it possible that what Ken is telling me about storytelling is really going to help me be more persuasive? And more importantly, is what Ken is telling me about storytelling in my business going to help me get more clients and sell more stuff? Maybe you're unsure about you. You know, that's great. Ken can do it. Ken's other clients are doing it, but I don't know about me. And if that's who you are, that's okay, because by the time you're finished listening to part 1 of this interview with Doug Stevenson today, here's my promise. You're going to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that storytelling for business is going to help you become more persuasive, and that the story theater method is going to play a pivotal role in your transformation into an effective business storytelling black belt. Now, before I actually bring Doug in on the show, I want to run through a short bio of his, and at the end of today's show, pay very close attention here. I'm going to give you a handful of backdoor links to his website so you can access some of the free resources he's got for you. Now, I'm not sure how long he's going to be leaving these links open, but if I understood him correctly, so at the end of today's show, I'm going to give you the links so you can access those resources. All right, so who is Doug Stevenson? Well, Doug Stevenson is the CEO of Story Theater International, based in Tucson, Arizona. He's the creator of the Story Theater Method and a master storyteller and storytelling and business speaker, trainer, and coach. With his background as a professional actor in Chicago and Hollywood, he brings a unique perspective to presentations and storytelling in the business world. Doug specializes in the strategic use of storytelling to engage, influence, and sell a product or service. He has helped tens of thousands of business professionals and hundreds of companies and associations use storytelling to improve communications and increase profitability. Doug has taught storytelling for leadership and business success to clients as diverse as Coca-Cola, Verizon, Deloitte, Caterpillar, which is one of our clients, Microsoft, Abbott Labs, US Bank, NBC, Oracle, HCA Healthcare, and Red Bull. His proven storytelling methodology has been polished and perfected by working on real-world challenges with leaders, marketers, fundraisers, engineers, professionals such as dentists and chiropractors, salespeople, and executives from around the world. And with that, let's roll. Let's bring Doug in on the show. All right, everybody, this is Ken Newhouse, your host, and I've got Doug Stevenson with us today. He's the author of the best-selling book, Story Theater Method, and also the lead trainer and the creator of the Story Theater Method, the actual series of trainings that you've done. I want to go ahead and welcome you on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation to the show. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Fabulous. This is an interview. You know, when we originally talked, I actually was doing a series of interviews on utilizing storytelling more specifically in business, and this is one of the interviews that I've been really looking forward to. Just because everybody knows you're like legendary in the field of storytelling, utilizing storytelling in business, you know, to get more clients and be more successful. And so certainly I've been chomping at the bit. Some of these questions, I'll admit, me being a little selfish for myself. So if I can get some free consulting from you while we're on the show. So if they seem a little slanted, that's why. But definitely everybody listening will be getting a benefit today. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and roll with it. So the first question that I ask every guest, and the Get Clients Now Nation members know this, is I want to know a little bit of a backstory about you. This is the first I asked 2 questions. Give us a little backstory, and I know your backstory, but I want to hear it again because it's really fascinating. Take a minute or 2, 3 minutes, whatever you need. Tell us a little bit about where you came from and kind of how you got to where you are now.
Well, backstory is an interesting terminology because it's a major part of storytelling. And my backstory started when I was 13 and I decided that I wanted to be an actor. And at 22, I hitchhiked to Hollywood with $200 in my pocket and a knapsack on my back, not a backpack. Back then it was a knapsack, my Boy Scout Troop 86 knapsack. And I went to Hollywood without knowing anybody there and hardly any money to get started. Just a dream, a passion, a belief that this was what I was meant to be. I was meant to be an actor and I was going to be a movie star. And so I got there and I gave it my all. I was an actor in Hollywood. I got an agent. I auditioned for movies and TVs and TV pilots. I did plays. I did musical theater. I sang rock and roll. I did stand-up. I did everything I could possibly think of in Chicago for 3 years and then in Los Angeles for 13 years to figure out how do you make it as an actor in Hollywood. And I learned a very valuable lesson there that is the same lesson that I'm here to talk about today, which is this. You're a commodity. Your product or service is a commodity, but you also are a commodity. You are part of that product offering. Well, as an actor, there is no other product offering other than you yourself, your personality, your style, your voice, your look, whatever. Well, I gave it my best, but my best was just not good enough. I just didn't get chosen. I mean, I got a few little things here and there, but nothing that really was satisfying, nothing that made me feel like, yeah, I'm making it. I'm getting somewhere. It's like, no, after 13 years, I'm like, I'm not getting anywhere. So I left. I left my dream behind. I just let go and I moved to Colorado Springs through a series of interesting events and I became a real estate agent, which is a weird thing to do. But it's like I was a carpenter in Hollywood. I didn't want to wear a tool belt anymore. So I became a real estate agent. And in real estate, one day I went to a real estate conference and up on stage in front of 1,000 people was a guy giving a keynote speech. And I was flabbergasted. I thought, what is that? That guy's getting paid to do a 1-hour speech. What is that? He's up on that stage. It's like, I want to be up on that stage. I could do that. Well, I had started doing a little bit of speaking to market myself as a realtor at Rotary clubs and Sertoma clubs and Optimist clubs and Lions clubs. And everybody was saying, wow, you're really good up here at the front of the room. You should be a professional speaker. Well, I didn't know that was a job until I saw this professional keynote speaker. And at that point, it's like, okay, this is my ticket out of real estate into something else. Well, real estate was great because it once again taught me how to market and sell myself. As an actor, I was a good promoter, a self-promoter. As a realtor, I was a good self-promoter. Well, I realized if I become a professional speaker, I will be the product. I will offer a service of my speaking skills. I need to have a topic. Well, I started out doing keynotes. When I eventually made the leap from real estate into professional speaking, I did keynotes on the positive power of change. And I got up there on the stage and I was the keynote speaker. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is like a one-man show in theater. I'm getting to do acting through my stories. And I started to develop a couple of really, really good stories. And what I hadn't understood consciously is that when I was an actor, going to plays and watching other theater, acting inside of plays, especially Shakespeare, I was unconsciously studying the form and structure of story. Why does this work? Why does that line always get a laugh? What are these forms and structures of entrances and exits and character development and drama and twists and turns? And what is all that? And why does that work? I was analyzing it without knowing I was. Well, when I started teaching storytelling to other speakers who said, the way you tell stories is pretty interesting. Could you teach me how to do that? Well, as everyone in this audience listening now knows, if you have to teach something, you have to analyze it. Well, that was the beginning of my story theater method. I started teaching other people how to tell stories. I developed the 9 steps of story structure. I developed my branding with the phrase that pays. I combined acting. I combined storytelling, narrative structure. I combined branding, a message like make your move, get over it, just do it. I combined all of these elements into this thing called story theater. And lo and behold, here I am 25 years later, an expert in the field of storytelling and business. But here's the thing. You said that I am like the master. I'm like the icon. It's like, you know what? I did a search this morning before I got on with you. I did a search for storytelling speaker on Google. 18,400,000 results. So I did storytelling keynote speaker, 4,000 results. Well, here's the thing. Whatever product or service you have to offer, you're not alone. We got a lot of competition. When I started teaching storytelling in business back in 1996, I didn't have much competition because it wasn't a thing. There was no desire for it in the marketplace. There was no market for it.
And Google was not really a player at that time at all.
Google began in 1996.
Correct.
So there was no Google search engine back there. So I was doing keynotes on the positive power of change, which I still do, and I still enjoy doing. But I started teaching storytelling and realizing, wow, this is my thing. This is my gift. This is my unique selling proposition, my unique storytelling proposition. I have something nobody else has, the story theater method. Well, I started teaching that and developing that and evolving it. Eventually, by 2002, I had the book. And other books started to be written about the power of story, the importance of story, but none of them taught how. And so I started to develop this ability to market and sell into corporate. And now here I am with thousands of Fortune 100, Fortune 500 clients, Coca-Cola, Verizon, Caterpillar, Google, Microsoft, Pfizer, Amgen, Deloitte, all these amazing clients who now know, as many people listening to this do, you need to be able to tell a good story if you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So that's my backstory. I started out to be a movie star. It didn't work. I transitioned into something else, real estate. That was fine, but it was a stepping stone into speaking. Keynote speaking led into storytelling training, and now here I am. It's been a wild ride. I've been in 18 countries all over the world with this, and I've discovered that storytelling is the universal language of business.
It is, and it's the universal language of the brain. So just one quick follow-up I have on that, and that is one of the things that I try to tell, like my dentist clients and then my other clients, is this, specifically with respect to, like, say, their website. You mentioned being a commodity, and story is what's going to set you apart. And so if you look at dentist websites as an example, or if you look at consultant websites or whatever, they're all using the same stock photos on the website.
Yes.
Their language is all the same. And the only thing that really differentiates one website from another is maybe the color and the name on the website. But they're the same stock images, the same language, pretty much the same layout. And really, there's nothing.
Pretty sad.
Everybody's thumping their chest. Exactly. And so story is a critical element. This is why I'm so fascinated in it, because of the ability to set you apart and the ability really to do things in your business that other people simply cannot do. So the second question I have, just very quickly, is, Doug, is there an individual or individuals, maybe a circumstance that kind of set you off in this direction? I know you said the speaker at that one real estate convention, and we do have, by the way, a lot of people in real estate that listen to the podcast. And so give a shout out to them. But having said that, anything comes to mind with that second question?
You mean mentors, people who inspired me?
Yeah, anybody comes to mind, that just really kind of set you in the right direction, or?
Well, of course, at the beginning, when you decide that you want to be a professional speaker, you end up going to what's called the National Speakers Association, hang out with people who are doing it. Because how do you learn how to do whatever it is that you want to do? Well, you hang out with people who are doing it, who are further down the road. So I went to the National Speakers Association up in Colorado, up in Denver, where I lived in Colorado for a while. And I started to see different personalities, different kinds of speakers, some very sophisticated and cerebral, some more goofy and silly and funny, some more storytellers. And at one particular meeting, there was a speaker, his name is W. Mitchell. And he got up there and he just blew me away, because his entire keynote was a series of stories about events that had taken place in his life. It wasn't high content. It was very emotional and very philosophical. And when I saw him, I saw my model. I saw an example of what my model could be, which is not trying to be some genius, some PhD, some, guy who wrote some brilliant book like Malcolm Gladwell or something. I'm not one of those guys. I'm a storyteller. I have profound lessons that I teach in storytelling that facilitate change in the people listening to my stories. So yes, I saw a number of professional speakers, and over the last 30 years, I've seen hundreds of different speakers who've given me different ideas, but mainly I was looking for permission. I was looking for permission to be me. I wasn't trying to be somebody else. I was looking for, where is a model of someone who is so close to what I would be able to do, that allows me to see that, oh, I can just do what I do and that'll be fine. I will find my place in this business.
Sweet. So you mentioned Google as being one of your clients earlier, and my next question actually has to do, I kind of intertwined one of my questions with your questions, and so I want to actually read that question out because it's a quote that you actually said. And you said at that presentation you did at Google at their headquarters, you said storytelling is a business, a very serious business. Literally, story is the most important communication tool you can have in your tool belt if you want to be memorable and if you want to be persuasive. And I know that the quote I just mentioned had a lot to do with your creation of the story theater method for storytelling in business and also the book by the same name. So here's my question as a follow-up. Why is story the most important communication tool in existence? And why are so many business owners and professionals literally raving about not only your method, the book itself, obviously, that's kind of a starting point, I think, for most people, but also the training and the results they're getting? Why are so many people, and how is this process, your method, so to speak, I guess if that's the right way to put it, how is this helping so many different people?
Everybody is telling stories all day long. The people who use them strategically and consciously and deliberately are the ones who get a result. The challenge for most people is they do not understand what I mean when I say you need to tell a story about who you are and what you do rather than explaining what you do. One of my quotes is, logic explains, stories persuade. People don't understand that if you explain what you do in logical linear terms with facts and data, and it's just, I've explained it really well, that's what I do. Okay, now buy it. Purchase my product and my service. I'm the one, I explain what I do. That doesn't change anything for anybody, because if logic and facts and data were enough, we wouldn't have to take communication skills courses on how to negotiate and how to persuade and how to influence. Stories, if they are deliberate. And what story theater method is, it's about a systematic approach to finding and crafting and delivering the right story that makes the right point for the right situation. That might be one-on-one, that might be one-on-10, that might be one-on-1,000. Because you might be in a town where you speak at Rotary clubs like I did. Well, then you need to be able to get up there at a Rotary club and give a presentation that is memorable. And the whole thing about story is the way story works in the brain. And I'll give you an example right now. I'll just do something very quickly that'll prove my point. I was in Atlanta a couple of months ago for a keynote speech. So I arrived in Atlanta. I got off the plane. I went through the airport. A zillion people in the Atlanta airport. When you get off the plane, you're wading your way through all of these crowds, and then you go down these escalators down to these trains. So you go way down these escalators. They're like forever, going way deep down. And finally you get to the bottom of this. It's like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of the earth. And you get on a train and it takes you to the terminal. You get another escalator that goes way up. And then you're trying to figure out, well, where do I go for my luggage? And so I go and I finally find my luggage carousel. And they've got about 20 luggage carousels. So you're standing there, hopefully finding where's the one that my flight is coming in from. And I'm standing there by the luggage carousel and I'm looking and bags are going by and bags are going by. And people are taking bags, and I'm worried. Is somebody going to take my bag? There's like 9,000 people out here. Somebody going to take my bag? And I'm looking and I'm waiting, and finally my bag comes, and I grab my bag. Okay, what just happened? Well, you were telling that story.
You were cranking out while the dopamine in my brain was being released, and you had me on the edge. And as soon as you stopped, I'm like, okay, that's not comfortable. I want to know.
I want to know. I want to keep going.
Correct.
The minute I start telling a story, the minute you start telling a story, if you know what you're doing and you use enough imagery and emotion and detail, the listener basically has no choice. Their brain gets activated. And what just happened is you started watching a movie.
Yep. In my brain.
You started seeing an airport. You saw crowds in an airport. You saw an escalator going down forever. You saw one. If you've ever been in any airport, you're watching this.
I hate that airport, by the way.
Well, but if you do business in the United States, you're probably going to go through Atlanta. Yes. Well, it's the busiest airport in the world. It's gigantic, and you know what I mean. There's 20 But the thing is, here's the thing that proves my point. When you tell a story, it activates the imagination, the visual memory of the listener. They watch the movie. They participate in the story. You weren't hearing my story. You were seeing your story. You were seeing yourself as if you were in the airport. You were visualizing yourself. You're hearing me. You're visualizing you. Marco Iacoboni wrote a book called Mirroring People. Mirroring people is called it's about this thing called a mirror neuron response.
Yep.
I'm talking about me in the Atlanta airport. You are having a mirror neuron response of you being in the airport. Yep. When I'm at the luggage carousel and I'm waiting and hoping that I found the right one, there's emotion to that. That triggers an emotion in you. It's called a mirror neuron response. If you explain something with logic and data, that doesn't happen. People don't watch the movie of your logical explanation. They just listen to it with their logical linear left brain. That doesn't cause change. Story, because it engages attention, it creates participation, it triggers emotional reactions, it pulls people in. It distracts them from their preoccupation and pulls them right into where you are, and you take them where you want them to go. And then at the end of the story, you leave them where you want with a phrase that pays, which is one of the things that I teach. And this story theater method is instructions for how you tell a powerful story that gets someone to change their perception, change their mind, do what you want them to do. You have a better chance of creating change, of selling a product or service with a story, if you know what you're doing, than if you just explain your product or service. Because if you're a dentist and you say, well, I'm a dentist and I'm a really good dentist and I do fillings and I do crowns and I do teeth whitening and I do those things. It's like, so what?
So does everybody else.
So does everybody else. What's the difference? Well, Simon Sinek says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. We want the emotional backstory. We want to know why somebody's doing what they're doing. Do they care about people? Is dentistry a passion? Is real estate your passion? They want to know the human being behind the product or service. Because I got to tell you, when I see storytelling speaker and there's 18,400,000 people, I could absolutely get discouraged and think, how could anybody ever find me? And yet they do. And for the last 25 years, I've made a really nice living because people like who I am and why I do it, and my differentiating factor of the story theater method. I have a method. People want transferable intelligence. That's what I give them.
Yeah, I think it's the results they're getting as well from your methodology.
People want results.
You know, one of the other quotes, and this obviously is not a question that I've written down, but one of the quotes that I just really grabbed me that I heard you say, and I really loved it. You said, emotion is the fast lane to the brain. And I thought, boy, that's sweet. I really like that. I'm going to have to borrow that. And so I've used it a couple times. But the reason I think, one of the reasons, there's several, that stories work so well, and you've touched on it, is that stories elicit, you talked about mirror neurons. Well, to trigger mirror neuron response, we have to have emotions being engaged.
Right.
Just data in and of itself, the logical part of our brain doesn't create emotional response. So we don't have neurotransmitter release. And as a result, we don't have mirror neuron response. So that was really awesome that you brought that up. And so, again, you mentioned dentists. In my mind, I don't find a better business setting where, a professional has somebody with their complete attention. Obviously, some of these patients are, anesthetized or they're asleep or whatever. But for the most part, they're not. And so you've got a person in a chair. They can't go anywhere. You've got a captive audience. The perfect time to tell stories instead of just chit-chatting with your hygienist or your assistant about nonsense.
Yes.
And all dentists love to tell stories. They love to tell stories about, I went to this institute. They love to tell stories about other patients, but they're not using strategic storytelling like you teach in the story theater method. And so the next question I want to kind of segue into is, I think for the most part, everybody knows on this program that I am an avid reader. And for the last, 10 or 15 years, I've literally read about 2 books a week. And over the last couple of years, I've noticed
a lot.
You would have never guessed it. I was a terrible student in high school, literally like maybe at the bottom of the class. I don't even know. It was just, I didn't enjoy reading, but now it's like a passion. And over the last couple of years,
it's education.
I just love to learn. I do. It's really cool. And I'm glad it worked out that way. But Doug, it seems like over the last couple of years, there have been a lot of books on neuroscience, neuropsychology, on how stories affect the brain, how stories affect the decision-making process in the brain. So if you could talk a little bit about that, because I know that's one of the things that you're really passionate about.
Well, when I started teaching storytelling, I was coming at it from a performance aspect and a storytelling form and structure aspect. It's like, how do we craft the story? How do we write the story? How do we use the 9 steps of story structure, traditional story structure? I didn't know anything about the brain science. All I know is, boy, when I tell a story, people come up to me afterwards and they want to tell their story and they're engaged and sometimes they're in tears. But it's like, wow, when I tell my personal stories about my journey, about the lessons that I've learned in my life, people are just blown away. They love it. They're engaged. They want to, they just like, it helps them change things about their life. I actually had an experience once where I was giving a keynote speech, The Positive Power of Change. And one of the lessons in my story about the positive power of change, I tell a story about having to let go of my visions of what a relationship was going to be like. And I told this amazing story, this wonderful love story about meeting my wife, Deborah, and how I had this need to have children. And she was done having kids. She wasn't going to have kids. And so it almost caused us to never get together. And I had to let go of the need to have children of my own, and that I was going to have her 2 sons. I was going to be a stepfather. And I tell this story about letting go. And this one woman in the audience who looked like she was not enjoying my story at all during the keynote. I mean, she looked like, I don't like this guy. I don't agree with this guy. I don't know why they hired this guy. This guy's making me mad. She came up to me after the keynote speech and she was obviously moved. Her nose was red. Her face was wet. She had been crying. And she said to me, "Thank you for saying the things that you said. I believe that God sent you here for me today, because I lost my husband to cancer 6 months ago, and I have not been able to let go until this moment. And during your speech, I realized it's time. I need to let go." And at that moment, I realized stories aren't just interesting. They're not just entertaining. They cause a movement within someone if they're done correctly. And stories always have an emotional quality to them because there's always an obstacle. There's always a challenge. There's something to be overcome in the story. That's why we choose that story. And so when I told that story, which is deeply personal to me and revealed something about me, she went through her story during my story with her husband. She went through her entire 6 months of grieving and being a widow and not being able to she went through that during my story. So my story was 7 minutes long. And in 7 minutes, she was able to change her future. That's emotion is the fast lane to the brain. It's because she felt a deep emotional connection to a problem she was having consciously. She knew consciously she needed to let go. She knew that. All of her friends were telling her, "Come on, when are you going to let this go? It's been months. You're going to have to let him go." She knew it intellectually. Not until the emotional trigger in the context of story brought the lesson, the intellectual lesson of you need to let go, with the emotional component of I have to. The emotion caused the movement. It causes the change. If you're trying to sell a product or service, you have competition. You have a lot of competition. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of reasons why not, why they shouldn't go with you. They could go with somebody else. Stories create change. If you can't change someone's perspective, if you can't change their mind, you can't succeed in business. But you're also not going to be able to communicate why. Why do I do what I do? Why am I different? Who am I?
You wanted the other
Most
thing?
people think, well, it's about my service, it's about my product. No, it's about you and your product and service. You are the product. You are the service. Your heart and your soul. That's what's going to get somebody to buy you rather than somebody else. And that's why I get mine and other people get theirs. I don't get everything. I don't get every booking that comes my way. Sometimes I choose somebody else.
It's interesting, we mentioned dentists earlier, but a lot of dentists and then these divorce attorneys, they have women that are coming in that have actually been jilted by their husband. I'll just give this as a quick example. And so their husband left them for a younger woman. Their self-confidence is destroyed. They're not feeling good about themselves. And these are really sweet, adorable, lovely, beautiful, talented women in a lot of instances, the way they've been described to me, and some of them I've actually met. And there have been a couple dentists, and I know this one attorney, that were able to tell stories. And then you mentioned your story. Well, going back to, I mentioned dopamine earlier, but you can release oxytocin. You can trigger the release of oxytocin in the person listening to you, a patient, a client, whoever. You can trigger that, which is going to create a feeling of them wanting to bond with you and being more trusting of what you're telling them. And so you can literally, a person mentioned this one time, and I don't agree with the way he put it, but he said you could literally be a drug dealer. And I know we have a lot of problems with drugs, and I'm not a drug user, and I'm against utilizing drugs, recreation or not, different topic, but you can literally cause different neurochemicals to be released within your prospect or your client or your patient's brain to cause them to have feelings towards you, or like trust and belief and confidence and things like that. And so the story you just gave was an awesome story. One of the other questions that I had, Doug, is that literally everybody knows, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, I know it. I do my due diligence before I have a guest on, but as far as I can tell, virtually everybody online knows, people in the know, people who are studying this, wanting to use storytelling to improve their business success, whether it's a professional, small business owner or a corporation, everybody knows, like, you're the guy, or you're one of the handful of guys at the top or gals at the top. And my question is this. I'm going to challenge you a little bit here, because what I want to know is, do you walk the walk? And I think you do, but I want to just throw it all out here. How do you get your new clients? How does Doug Stevenson get his new clients? Is he utilizing the same stuff he's telling us to use? Or in fact, is there another way you're getting them?
Well, obviously, one of the ways that all of us who are speakers find our place in the marketplace is by getting up and giving a speech, and people see you. They see you, they feel you, they experience you, they hear your stories, which nobody else has. And then they buy you because they go, well, I have to have Doug. I just saw Doug and I think Doug is wonderful and I have to have Doug. Well, that's one way. But here's the thing that's interesting about my business. Most of my business comes from Google searches, from people who don't know who I am. They do a Google search, they find me, they filter on down through to my website, they look at things on my website, and then they contact me. And more often than not, I say to them, so you were on my website? Yeah, I was on your website. What was it on my website that caused you to pick up the phone and call me, or to fill out the form, the contact form, and say, I'd like to talk to Doug? What was it on my website that you saw? 8 out of 10 times they'll say, oh, that story about you and your dog. Oh, so let me tell you the story about me and my dog. That is the story that shows that I do walk the talk. I'm a dog lover. Many people out there are dog lovers. I had a dog. Her name was Jaya. I got her when she was a little pup, just a little rescue dog. At about 2 years of age, she got sick. And I had never, as an adult, had a dog that got sick before, but I could tell it's like she's not eating dinner and she's lethargic and something's wrong with my baby. So I took her to the vet, and the vet, Dr. Joanne, this lovely lady vet, she diagnosed my dog, and she came back out and she said, yeah, it's not a big deal. She's got a little virus. She's got a little doggy cold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some pills. You give her one of these pills at dinner and one of these pills with breakfast. I thought, okay, fine. She gave me a little tutorial on how you give a dog a pill. I went home. At dinner time, I called Jaya over. Jaya. And she came over, and I talked to her. I said, Jaya, Dr. Joanne said that I need to take this pill and I need to put it down into the back of your throat. And if I hold your mouth closed, you're going to swallow it. So I did that. I took the pill and I opened her mouth and I shoved it down into the back of her throat, and I held her mouth closed. And everybody who's ever done it with a dog, you know what I'm talking about. And I held the dog and I stared at her and she stared at me, because I couldn't tell. How do I know that she swallowed the pill? She wasn't moving at all. Nothing was happening. She just stared at me. So I held it like this for about 60 seconds, finally went, okay, well, I guess you've done it. And what did she do? She spits up the pill, right? Everybody who's ever tried this knows what I'm talking about. It's supposed to work. Maybe it works 1 out of 10, but it didn't work with Jaya. I went through 2 pills like this, and I thought, this is expensive. These pills are expensive. It's not supposed to work like this. I looked up at the clock. It was after hours. I thought, who do I know that has a dog that's probably my friend John. I called my friend John. I said, John, Jaya is sick and I'm giving her these pills and she keeps spitting them up. What do I do? He says, well, do you have any peanut butter? Do I have any peanut butter? What does that got to do with anything? Yeah, I've got peanut butter. Scoop some peanut butter out, put it in your palm, take the pill, hide it inside the peanut butter, and she'll swallow the peanut butter and she'll get the pill. Hide the pill in the peanut butter? Really? That's going to work? And he said, yeah, it'll work. Okay, I'll call you back. So I did that. I got a scoop. I put it in my hand. I took the pill. I stuck it in there. I held it down to Jai. And what does she do? She swallows the peanut butter. And she swallows the pill. It was so cool. It's like, oh, my God, I got her to swallow the pill. What the heck does this have to do with storytelling and business? The pill.
Everything.
The pill is good medicine. It's data. It's facts. It's your product. It's your service. It's what you usually do to explain what you do. But if you shove it down people's throat, if you just explain what you do with data and logic, they don't swallow it. The person listening to you doesn't necessarily swallow it. They don't change anything. The peanut butter is sticky. It is delicious. It is story. I teach people to hide the pill, their data, their science, their compliance in the story butter, in the peanut butter. So when I say hide the pill in the peanut butter, my clients, the people who contact me, they hear that story and they go, that is exactly our problem. We are shoving our content down people's throats. We've got all this data, we've got all this science, and it's not convincing. It doesn't create an emotional connection. We need you to teach us how to hide the pill in the peanut butter. That story sells me. It's made me millions of dollars. It's gotten me hired all over the world because story is the universal language. Giving a dog a pill is kind of a universal experience for a lot of people, and it's a metaphor. I'm not expecting my high-tech clients like Google and Microsoft to hide a pill in a peanut butter. No, they get it. He's talking about the metaphor of we've got too much content, we've got too much data. He can teach us how to have just a little bit of data inside a story. I don't know how he's going to teach us to do that, but that's what we need. Let's hire Doug. Nobody else has the pill in the peanut butter story, and none of you can use it because it's mine.
All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up part 1 of the interview that I recently did with Doug Stevenson, and we'll pick back up with part 2 of the interview on our next episode of the Get Clients Now podcast. See you guys then. If your business is struggling and you can't crack the online marketing code, and you'd like to access the newest and most effective strategies, systems, and tools that are working right now in the trenches, check out the funneltribes.com online community and discover how thousands of consultants and professionals just like you are transforming their businesses, building massive tribes of loyal clients, and making more money.